Big breaking news. Former President Trump is speaking outside court after an appeals court ruled he can post a smaller bond in his New York civil fraud trial. Let's listen.
Very much. Judge Engoron has done a terrible disservice to the state of New York. What he's done is terrible. Businesses are fleeing. You see that. We just released a statement on Truth. Businesses are fleeing and crime is flourishing all over the state. And what he's done is such a disservice and should never be allowed to happen again. New York State is being battered by his decision. So I greatly respect the decision of the appellate division, and I'll post either $175 million in cash or bonds or security or whatever is necessary very quickly within the 10 days. And I thank the appellate division for acting quickly. But Judge Engoron is a disgrace to this country, and this should not be allowed to happen. Thank you very much.
Would you accept foreign money to pay the bond?
That was former President Trump speaking outside court after a New York appeals court ruled he can post a smaller bond than the $464 million originally imposed in his New York civil fraud trial. A panel of 5 judges is now giving Trump's team 10 days to secure that bond before the New York Attorney General can start seizing his properties. Let's bring in ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci, ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer, and ABC News contributor, former Georgia prosecutor Chris Timmons for more. John, what do we know about next steps for Trump to now try to secure this smaller bond?
Well, listen, they can go back to any one of the 30 bond companies that turned them down the last couple weeks for the bigger number and say, hi, now the number is a little less. Can we talk again? And that's exactly what Donald Trump's team is going to do here, Diane. Look, the reality is that in order to build a bond package, you need one of 2 things. You need a little bit of cash and you need collateral, something to put up. If you look at what he did with the E. Jean Carroll ruling, which he dealt with in just the last couple of weeks, that's exactly what he did. A little cash, leverage one of the properties. You will see a similar scenario happen now that Donald Trump has gotten this number down by a significant amount. 464 to 175 is a very big difference. As one source close to the former president said to me within just the last couple of minutes, this is exactly what we wanted, because the reality is they were waiting to see what this Court of Appeals was going to do. They had given up all options as to another way to pull in some cash. As we talked about earlier today, there had been conversations after his social media company Truth Social now went public on NASDAQ. Could he liquidate assets there to get some quick cash? A real divide amongst allies to Donald Trump on both sides. You know, if he did that, it would basically take Truth Social and blow it up, because without Donald Trump, it's nothing. So this really was their last hope, and clearly they got what they wanted.
Chris, what went into this decision, and where does it leave the AG now in these prospects of seizing Trump's assets?
Well, so what went into the decision was Trump's inability to raise the funds to get the bond, or to convince bonding companies to give him the money to put up the $450 million, which was a tall order. And so where we go from here is, you know, obviously the Trump company, just Trump, as John just mentioned, has to go out and secure those bonds either through, you know, means of cash or collateral, or finding a bonding company to give it to him. After that, though, then the Attorney General has 10 days in which she can appeal the order if she wants to. Probably unlikely. I think, you know, you want to sit back and look like a dispassionate public official. Now, if they don't come up with the bond, or she appeals within the 10 days and she's successful in that appeal, then we're back to where we were today, which is you've got the New York Attorney General in the process of trying to seize properties, Diane.
So, Brian, assuming that Trump can secure this lower bond, what are the next steps for an appeal then?
So if Donald Trump can secure this bond, then that allows for the stay of the enforcement of the judgment, meaning that the Attorney General James won't be going after his bank accounts or his property, whether it be real property like Trump Tower or property such as like a Trump Force One, for example. But in terms of the appeal, it would continue as what he would want to be able to say that the judge in this case made errors in his ruling, whether or not it was allowing in the wrong piece of information or not allowing information that Donald Trump and his attorneys were asking for, whether a mistake of law or judgment. Those, I think, got to be the 2 biggest appellate issues that Donald Trump wants to raise, and then it will go forward. If he wins the appeal, then overturns. If not, then whether or not he puts up this $175 million to hold off the enforcement, if he loses, then it'll come time for Attorney General James to start collecting.
And Brian, Donald Trump has spoken negatively throughout this whole process about Judge Engoron over and over again. We just heard him again outside that courtroom complaining about this judge. Does this ruling by the appellate court reflect negatively on the judge in this case?
No, I won't say that this is a ruling that affects negatively on the judge, because it's not based on the merits or the rulings of the judge in this case. It's merely an evaluation of the amount that Donald Trump has to pay. Without further explanation, I can only guess as to what the reasoning would be, but my strongest guess would be just the amount itself is something that this intermediate appellate court says, you know what, it's a lot, maybe too much, and we'll reduce it to an amount, because we don't want people to have the power of enforcement hanging over their head while the appeal issues, because they don't have enough money. That's an issue for whether or not you're a billionaire or you just have a few $100s in your bank account. It's really the appellate court or the intermediate court, if they decide to, who will rule on the judgment of the judge that will have a greater saying as to his rulings, whether or not they think they were right or wrong.
John, what are you hearing from Trump's inner circle about this decision?
I mean, ecstatic. As one person just said to me, you know, it's a start, it's going in the right direction, because the reality was 464 was not a number they were going to hit. They were preparing for the worst case scenario. And look, Donald Trump, as we talked about earlier, Diane, said it himself this morning. They're going after my babies. He didn't mean his 5 children. He meant one of his buildings, which are his prized possession. He brags about them, shows them off to everybody. Kind of the way you and I talk about our kids, that's the way he talks about his real estate. So, listen, to each their own, I suppose. But that is something that really was annoying Donald Trump to his core. And this really is the foundation of who Donald Trump is, right? He's only been a politician for the last nearly 10 years. He's been a businessman his entire life. This is how Donald Trump catapulted himself into politics, was through these images, right? I'm really rich, he would say. I have all these amazing buildings. I have the most popular address you'd want on Fifth Avenue. That's how Donald Trump leveraged a campaign to voters across the country in 2015 and 16 when he did win that first race. So obviously this is something that we all expect would bother Donald Trump. It certainly has. Now, the question becomes, how quickly will they move? 30 companies turned them down. I can already tell you they are in the process right now of quickly securing this bond, and frankly, to move on. And in part because he's got a lot of other cases to deal with. I mean, we've all been waiting to see what's going to happen in the hush money case today. That is criminal case 1 of 4 that he's got against him right now.
So let's talk about that, because, Chris, Trump is in court for a hearing in the hush money case against him, also in New York. The judge in that case appeared visibly irritated when Trump's attorney couldn't provide a case citation related to allegations he's making of prosecutorial misconduct. So how significant is that, and where do you see that case going?
Well, so it's never a good sign when the judge is asking you to cite authority and you just don't have any. I mean, that's a really bad day for an attorney to be standing there, you know, with your hands out with nothing to give the court when it comes to authority that they can follow. So, I mean, you know, what happens from here is the judge has got to make a determination on, you know, whether the case goes forward, and it looks like it will. I mean, the defense wanted him to dismiss the case on alleged discovery violations, meaning that they hadn't turned over all of the information that they were supposed to turn over. And so I think the judge is probably not going to make a ruling to dismiss the case. The next ruling that the judge has to make is, okay, guys, I know we're going forward. How quickly can we get this thing ready to go to trial? And I think that's the question on everybody in the United States' mind, is when are these cases going to trial? When is the first one going to roll? And it looks like so far, based on how this hearing is going, is it's going to go as planned. There won't be any further delays, and we'll be going to trial in New York, Diane.